Betsy Face. My grandma, Betsy Face.
Ready?
You know Betsy
Yeah,
Face?
ready.
Okay. Ready?
Why not?
We're recording. Tell me, when did you first meet Felix, and how did that come about?
Why did I what?
When did you first meet Felix Pappalardi, and how did that come about?
My recollection of meeting Felix, I believe, it's been years, was at the old Cafe Fin John on 7th Avenue South. It was a very small coffee house, a tiny little place on the corner. And Menachem Dorman owned the place. And it was a meeting place for Middle Eastern musicians and Israeli musicians. And I gravitated toward it because it was a great place to hang out. And I met Steve Knight first, I think, and then Felix. Exactly how, aside from just hanging out, I don't know. But I remember that going into that place and listening to the musicians playing oud and going, wow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I said, wow. And I was listening to a count, I couldn't find 1. And Felix, or Steve, told me to find 1 in a 5/8, 7/8. I wasn't used to it. People don't understand how different it is. We play 2/4, 4/4, 3/4 in American music. Middle Eastern music is 5/7, you know. And they taught me about those time signatures. That was my first experience of that kind of music with the musicians who played it. I sat and listened for a long time, and then Steve Knight and Felix talked to me and showed me. And David Amram as well would come in. It was a great little place. Great. Can you imagine Steve Knight, Felix, David Amram, and other musicians whom I didn't know? They were wonderful musicians playing Middle Eastern music, and it was exciting. And the room was a third the size of this room. Okay. And it was jammed all the time and crowded, and wonderful music being played. And that's how I met Felix.
What kind of guy was Felix?
What kind of guy was he? He was a wonderful guy. He was a musician. He was smart. He was quick. He was educated, bright as hell, and willing to teach if you wanted to learn. If you asked him a question, he'd answer the question. If you needed music, he'd teach you music. Okay, that's all I ever needed then, before I cared about food.
So then you hooked up with him and did some work with him. Tell me about that.
What happened was with the Tear Down the Walls, that album in 1963 with Elektra. Fred Neil and I were working at the Gaslight with Mississippi John Hurt. And one night, produced it. I forgot who produced the record. I can't remember who produced the record. That's interesting. I keep thinking Weintraub. It's not Weintraub. Paul Rothschild. Paul Rothschild. I haven't thought about it in a while. That's why I forgot his name. Paul Rothschild came in and listened to us and said, hey, you guys want to do a record? And I said, sure. Freddie wasn't sure. I was sure. I just got married, and I needed the money. And Freddie was getting royalties from Candyman, Roy Orbison's song, which I didn't know at the time. I didn't realize that he had such a hit record. Okay. Freddie didn't talk about all that unless you delved deeply into it. And so Rothschild said, I'll give you guys $500 each advance, and we'll do a record with Elektra Records. And I said, yeah, I like that. And Freddie says, oh, I don't know. I said, shh, Fred, shut up. Yeah, we're going to do the, okay. And we did. But as that began to take place, to begin to happen, I was walking down McDougal Street, and I see this kid coming toward me with a tan raincoat and a holster full of harmonicas, which I'd never seen before. I'd never seen that many. I'd seen harmonicas before. And I stopped him, and I said, hey, I said, what are those things? Do you play those? He says, yeah. I said, what's your name? He says, John Sebastian. I said, I'm Vince Martin. How are you? I said, can you really play those? He said, yes, I can play. Fred Neal and I are working at the Gaslight. Why don't you come down and play with us? Okay? Why not? That night, in comes John Sebastian. Freddie, who's that? I said, I met him in the street. He's going to play harmonica. Oh, shit, are you kidding? I said, well, Fred, I said, he looks like he's real. He's got all those harmonicas in a holster, and he's got a smart-looking face, and he's well-spoken. So John goes back in the kitchen at the Gaslight and starts to boil marbles and put the harps in the boiling. We blew the fuses?
No. Just continue. It's a light motion sensor.
So John began to boil the marbles, and I said, why are you doing that? To loosen up the reeds so I can play cross harp. I said, oh. I said, see, Fred? He knows about cross harp. So we go out on stage and we begin to play. And John comes out and begins to play, and Fred turns around and looks and goes, whoa. I said, there you go. And that's how we met John. And then Felix got in touch with us. I don't remember if he came into the Night Owl or if we met him at the Gaslight. But John, I think, was instrumental too in getting Felix together with us. And that was the most incredible when I saw the Guitarron, which I'd never seen except once in Mexico, like in 1962. And I said, you play that? May I play that? And then I learned what a schooled musician he was. He was a complete theory. He knew music. He was a music scholar. He came in with the guitar. John played the harp, and it was just magic. Felix could sing. Felix played guitar. Felix played bass. Felix played keyboard. He did it all. And the thing about Felix was, the guitar is a fretless instrument, as you know, right? He was the first bass player of that ilk that I'd seen play a fretless bass. When he played the, I shouldn't say that, of course I'd seen people play a double bass, but I'm talking about a rock and roll or folk or blues player on a bass. Fretless bass. And the Guitarron, of course, was fretless, sort of like a baby bass fiddle, you know. I guess what it is, actually. So, and that was, it just began, and Felix came into the studio for that album and contributed so much energy and honesty to the record that what you hear on that record is a projection of a lot of Felix's energy, as well as mine and Fred and John. Felix was the only one who didn't mind my playing lead guitar on the break on Dead on the Walls. When I did Toy Balloon, Felix played. That was Felix playing with me, not John. Felix played the guitar on that cut. As a matter of fact, you know what? That's interesting. I'm just remembering that now. And Felix really liked that song, and he played guitar with me. John played harp like we'd never heard before. I mean, just magic harmonica. And the whole thing was a beautiful thing. And Felix and I were friends. We were supposed to do another album. And we played The Bitter End. Freddie broke a string on his 12 string. And he walked off the stage and left me You know about this story? It left me and Felix and John on stage. And Felix got crazy. We finished the set without Fred. We went back, and Felix grabbed Fred. And he was just not a big guy, Felix. I mean, I don't think he weighed 140 pounds, 150 pounds. Freddie was about 152, you know, the two of them. He picked him up and put him against the wall. He said, don't you ever do anything as unprofessional as walk off the stage on me again. I'm a professional. Oh, I mean, he left me out. John was him. He was the man. And it was people backstage go like this, and Fred went, oh, like that. Felix didn't, seriously, was that upset by it. Me, I was hurt by it, was upset by it, but Felix was professionally. You just didn't do that. You didn't leave a stage. You finished singing with a broken leg, man. You just, you know, I've done that. I've whistled when I had a cold. I remember whistling an entire set in Detroit in the winter because I couldn't sing for squat. And I got applause. To this day, I don't remember how I did it, but I know I whistled. I couldn't sing. I talked, I whistled, I played guitar, and I did a show because I had a cold. And if I didn't get paid. And if I didn't get paid, I couldn't drive back to Coconut Grove. So, I mean, that's the rules. So, but that was Felix. Felix had a fierce temper as well, which I didn't realize until that night. But that was an amazing thing. And then, on and off, we saw each other, we talked, and we knew each other. And that one thing that I tell you about, I was in the Grove, home, writing a song. And about 2 in the morning, I was trying to get a bridge. I couldn't get a bridge, and I was going nuts. I said, I'll call Felix, because Felix has all the answers. Hello, Felix? Vincenzo, what? I said, Felix, I'm stuck for a bridge, man. He says, I'm in bed with my old lady. It's 2:30 in the morning. He says, what? I sang him the song. He says, you know what? You call me tomorrow. You're chasing me musically? Yes, I am. I'm chasing Bach. Va dormire, good night. That was Felix. He's a wonderful guy. Wonderful man. He was absolutely great influence, great friend. What can I say? We recorded again 1978. I got Felix to come down. He was down in Miami. Well, he was living by Criteria. He was living there, and he came down to the Grove. Got Corky to come down. Corky Lang came down. Panama Red, Danny Finley, and Paul Harris playing keyboard. There's a genius. There's a brilliant keyboard player. I don't know where. I hope Paul's okay. I don't know where he is, but he played just magic piano. Those people that I mentioned made my music had to sound better than it really was. They just, you know, they were wonderful musicians, and they loved to play. They would play and learn and teach you by learning. And I learned from them how to listen, how to hear, how to invent, how to not be afraid, how to not play, lay out. You don't know what you're playing? Shh, say geez. Don't play. You lay out.
What was the atmosphere like in Greenwich Village in the early 60s?
The atmosphere?
Mention what we're talking about.
Yeah, the atmosphere was one of great excitement. Everybody was learning. Everybody was becoming what they became. There were no stars. Well, I'd had a hit record. I was an anomaly because I'd had a hit record, I had a big car and had a little car. I had money in my pocket. So that must have been weird to a lot of the people that first met me because everybody else was still scuffling. And here I was, had a hit record, made a lot of money, and still had money. I did indeed. And it was, you spent the night and the day learning, listening, playing with people. Dick Rosmini, John Stauber. There were guitar players. Bruce Langhorne. There were people playing in the village that were best musicians you'll ever hear. And they would sit and play with you. There was no ego tripping. There was ego tripping. That's not true. But the most important thing was the music. I don't recall anyone ever refusing to play with me or let me play with them if I could play what they were playing. I mean, I didn't jump in and play with Miles Davis, you know. But there was always a feeling of support and a feeling of, wow, oh, can I play with that? You know, there was that. Everybody was learning. Everybody was playing, and everybody was live. It was live. We didn't listen. I listened to records, of course. Okay, I listened to the radio. But everything that I learned in those years, I learned from people. And to this day, I learn best. If you teach me a song face to face, I get it right away. If I listen to a record, it's going to take me an hour. If I get it out of a book, I might never learn it. I mean, I might not care. That's true. So the living music and the moving music and the moving parade of musicians was the most exciting thing in the world. I went every day when I got to the village from where I was living, either in Brooklyn or in the city. It was like a revelation. There was always something happening, always. And you know, I miss that. I miss that.
Do you remember the Izzy Young's Folklore Center?
Oh, sure.
Mention it and then talk about it.
Izzy Young, sure. The Folklore Center was a big deal then. And Izzy Young, Izzy Young owned the Third Fret, became Folk City, the club. Mike Porco, he sold it to Mike Porco, and Mike Porco hired me. I was the first act he hired to perform at Folk City after he got the place from Izzy Young. And Izzy was upset with Mike and me for some reason. And one day in the Folklore Center window appears a sign, "Vince Martin is a fascist." I said, what? I said, first of all, I was 19 years old. I wasn't sure what a fascist really was. I mean, I knew, sort of, but I didn't know what the real textbook definition was. So I just said, Izzy, what's a fascist? Oh, you're a fascist. I said, Izzy, what? Had something to do with Mike Porco and the club. And it was funny. It was funny. I mean, it was not, but the first time I've ever been called a fascist, and the last time, okay, in my life. But Izzy and I are friends to this day. We're friends. That was not a deal breaker, okay? That was just a moment, you know. But the Folklore Center was a great place to find books, Sing Out magazine, different Hootenanny magazine, and he had a great array of magazines and books and musical things and records. And people hung there. Freddie and I played. I think we sat on a chair there and sang a couple of times, you know. And it was, of course, was right next to the Kettle of Fish, which was the best bar in the village. I mean, if you didn't drink at the Kettle of Fish or the San Remo, which is another great bar on the corner of Bleecker and McDougal. But the Kettle of Fish was above the Gaslight and next to the Folklore Center, and they made, every afternoon at 3 o'clock, they made like a dish of pasta, and it cost like $1 or $2, and everybody ate. By 4 o'clock it was all gone. If you didn't get there fast, you didn't get your food. And it was just a great bar. And the Folklore Center was there. People lived upstairs, I forget who, but we played cards upstairs. Dave Van Ronk, myself, Tom Paxton. We play cards. I mean, the writing of songs and the singing of songs took place in a constant river of movement. It was always happening. 24/7, there was music. It was live all the time. The worst time was when the bars closed at 4 o'clock and the coffee houses, Cafe Wa, 2 o'clock in the morning. We would turn an entire new house at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know what that is? You don't do that here. You couldn't do it here. I'm talking 100 people. And one group would leave, and people would come downstairs 2 o'clock in the morning. 100 people, new people. That was amazing. But that's how exciting the music had to have been for them, the audience. We were the musicians. I mean, I was singing with Peter Yarrow, I was singing with Dino Valenti, with Freddie, with John Hammond, with Bob Gibson, Hamilton Camp. Everybody worked at the Cafe One. And we all night long, we'd interchange. We'd sing with each other. And we'd do set after set after set. And then the girl would pass the cornucopia of the basket. And that's how we got paid. And a good night, 15, 20 bucks. It was a good night. 1957, 58, 59, 60, 20 bucks a night. You could eat. We used to go down to Hung Fat down on Mott Street, and for $1, get a dish of lo mein at 3 o'clock in the morning, choke a horse. You know, the same dish now costs you like $10, okay, $8. It was $1, and it was like this. And then we'd walk from Badua Street down to Mott Street, carrying our guitars on our backs. It was like nothing. I'm thinking about that. God, I can't walk there. And we'd walk there and walk back. And it was just wonderful. We'd talk and sing. And of course, Soho was not Soho. Soho was just West Broadway and Broadway. And it was streets. And by that time of night, there was nothing there except the rats. Nothing. There were no after-hours clubs. There were no shops. These were lofts that had been companies that had gone out of business. Empty lofts, empty storefronts, garages, gas stations, okay? It was a wonderful, it was like a film noir. You could walk down in a film noir in your own movie. When the streets were wet and the cobblestones were wet, it was the most great feeling. Walk down the middle of West Broadway, 3 abreast, and not see a car. True, not see a car. Walk down Broadway, 3 o'clock in the morning, not see a car. Chinatown, at 3 in the morning, 24-hour restaurants. Then, at 3 o'clock in the morning, were full. With all kinds of people, Chinese people, American people. Like that. Occidentals, Orientals. So walking around was more fun. You weren't interfered with by groups of people or by neon lights of stores, and it was, and you could make up your own history about the buildings, or what they've been, what they were now. I'm talking too much.
When did you first meet Jimi Hendrix?
Okay, back at the Cafe Au Go-Go, 60, yeah, like that, 65, 66, 68. Yeah, back then. And
Oh, 66 was with John Hammond. Summer of 66.
Summer 66, yeah.
John Hammond, Cafe Go-Go.
Yes, yes. And he was Jimmy James and the Blue Flames first, and then became Jimi Hendrix. He used his name. And I didn't hang with Jimmy then. I didn't hang with him until Peter Tork came and picked me up and we traveled together.
But before that, tell me about the show with John Hammond. What'd you think of him? Is that the first time you saw him?
John Hammond, he was a very intense blues singer.
No, I'm talking about Hendrix.
Oh, Hendrix.
When you first saw him with John Hammond, what'd you think?
I thought he could play guitar like nobody else. Man. The guy was scary. He was a scary guitar player. I mean, left-handed, right-handed. That was knocked me out. He'd switch hands. That used to make me crazy. You know, I mean, think about it. That he could do that. I don't know any left-handed guitar players anymore. I knew 2 more. They're dead, friends of mine. A guy named Wayne Wright, who played with Les Paul, and who helped pull Les Paul out of Jersey and put him back into the market, because Les had become very reclusive and very, he had arthritis and yada, yada, yada. And Wayne and some other friends of mine went down to Jersey to his home and pushed him to come out of his shell. And Wayne played left-handed guitar, brilliant left-handed guitar player, but he didn't play right-handed. Okay, Jimi was the only one that I saw do that, and that was always like, just don't do that. I had no trouble tuning the damn thing, you know. But
He played with his teeth?
Huh?
You saw him play with his teeth, behind his head, between his legs?
Well, behind the head, that's an old country trick. Freddie and I used to do that too. Behind the head, that's an old country trick. And then like a bell, all those things, that's old country stuff that we did. With the teeth, that was Jimi. that was just like smashing a guitar, that was Jimi's thing. Although I'm sure that had precedence someplace else. There not being anything new under the sun. Which brings us to music again. We have 7 tones in the scale. 7 tones in the scale. And we make all these musics. It's amazing. It always amazes me that you can juxtapose those 7 tones so many different ways and make so much music out of it. It's scary. But that was why when I met Felix and Steve Knight, that the Eastern music, which has many more tones, 12 tones in the scale, that it made more sense that the multitude of songs or musical pieces could come about. They had different rhythms and more notes in the scale. We have fewer. I am amazed at the jazz musicians who don't like ragas, who don't like. There's a lot of musicians who don't enjoy it, Middle Eastern music. But I find that Middle Eastern music has so much more energy, like than a lot of ours. I used to hang out at Greek clubs in Queens with a friend of mine who was a Greek. And we'd go to these, they start at 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning. And we'd drive into Flushing, or wherever the hell it was, and go down to the basement of this club. And there was a band playing. For 2 hours, they didn't stop. And the rhythms didn't stop. And the rhythms were intricate and wonderful. And men and women would dance to that music. We don't do that in America. We don't do that in America. We treat our music as a little bit aloof. You know, we listen to it, but I love that different music. I'm talking.
What is that picture? Does that picture of Felix bring back memories?
Yeah, I looked at that. I love that picture. He was a good-looking man, and he was articulate. He had a great sense of humor, and I miss him. I would love, if he were here now, I'd be so happy. Oh, Felix, wherever you are, I love you, man. Miss you.
Take over. Ask some questions.
Okay.
Albert, baby.
Yeah, nice to be here today.
Thank you for driving me here, man.
Anytime.